Hello and welcome back to the Wheel Talk podcast. My name is Abby Mickey and I am back in the studio with Georgie Howe, Neef, and a special guest to talk about, well, we're going to do a bit of a Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift wrap up and look to the future of women's cycling after the tour is done. Neef, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back.
Georgie Howe?
Matt's not sick of me yet, so he decided I'm going to jump in on this episode.
And we wanted to talk about the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift, which is why we brought in a very special guest who you will know from our daily episodes of the tour, but from many, many, many other things as well. Iris Slappendel, hello.
Hello. Thanks for having me again.
It's not every day we get you on a full-length episode, so this is really exciting.
It's been actually a few years ago, I think, so
Ooh, well,
I thought you almost forgot about me.
No, we could never. Well, we had the biggest race of the season is done and dusted, but the season's not over yet. So today we're going to look back on the tour and look ahead to what's coming up in the coming months, or at least next week for women's cycling. The Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift was a massive race. Georgie's going to talk about the economic impact of the race. We're going to talk about specific riders, teams, etc. So let's dive into it. So what from your three point of view, because you were actually on the ground at the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift, what do you think were some of the biggest storylines that stuck with you guys? Because I wrote down a list here, but I'm curious about how being at the race might change the perspective from a viewer at home.
It was really hard. I think having raced it a couple of years ago and then seeing it now on the other side as a reporter, and talking to the riders, talking to the directors, hearing basically like seeing the efforts that these riders are making and like doing some data crunching, and looking at previous years as well. This edition was the hardest edition yet by far, and it's I feel like we're at a bit of a crossroads in which way the sport can go. And I know, Abby, you've written on this already. I'm sure we'll go into it later as well, but I think it was a really formative year as well, formative edition of the tour, and we'll have to see which direction the sport goes, but really hard, really formative, and we'll have to see what happens.
Do you reckon that the course was too hard?
Yeah, and that's something I would love to get into. It's something I've actually started gathering anonymous quotes from riders on this, whether or not the course is fit for purpose to what women's cycling wants to become. Like, we don't need to be men's cycling, and it is a different brand. And we actually, we also need to think about the performance of women differently than we think of the performance of men and how we attain that high level of performance. So it's an ongoing investigation. I don't have the answer yet, but I think it's something worth digging into.
For me, it was the fans, I think, that is for me a really big storyline of this tour, because obviously year on year this race is growing, but this year I was really blown away by the amount of people along the course everywhere. And I think as I was on the back of the motorbike also, you really see you see so much the difference year on year, and not just on the finish and start locations, but also in the towns in between. And last year I was honestly a little bit disappointed. I think it was super, super fun and busy the first few stages in the Netherlands, and then when we entered France, it was a lot less. And and I thought especially the Alpe d'Huez finish was actually, I expected a lot more people there, and I was a bit like, oh, I hope this year is going to be a little better, and it was so much better. And I think maybe it had to do with the timing and the race growing, but I think it had mostly to do with the fact Pauline PFP was there, and just seeing how big she is in France and what it does for a sport when you have somebody who is so big and so well known in the country. How many people that attract was quite I don't know if I should say an eye opener, but it was I was a bit blown away by it.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think for me, one of the storylines that really stood out amongst a whole lot of storylines throughout the week was the rise of Pauline PFP. We talked in the lead up about how all the rumours were that she was absolutely flying, and she'd come out of that 81-day lead up that Georgie talked a lot about throughout the week, in really good form. But and we got to see a bit of that on stage one where she helped Voss to that stage win. But I think just seeing how she was able to prepare so well for this race and again, just show that she's a rider that when she puts her mind to something, she very rarely misses, and just seeing her emerge in the last weekend of the race was something pretty incredible. And then you see that over the backdrop of the crowds and how they increased, as Iris said. I think it was, a pretty remarkable ride from her in what has been a pretty remarkable career. But the whole, I'll give myself 3 years to win it and then win it on the first go is pretty incredible.
You all three make like really good points, and I think that the tour can be summed up in like major storylines as like on the bike storylines and around the race storylines. Like there's just an overwhelming amount to talk about when it comes to the actual racing, the teams in the race, storylines that happen throughout the race, like Maeva Squibbon and UAE Team ADQ, Sarah Gigante, ST Works Pro Time, like Kopecky and Lorena, all of these things. There's all of those storylines, and then there's like the greater impact of the race and the like what Georgie has talked about with the economic impact that we'll get into, the fans, all of these things. It's like there's two kind of paths alongside the race that are just this race has such an such an insane impact on the sport, and it's both off the bike and on, as we saw at this tour.
I don't think anymore you can look at them separately. As in, like, I think like it's good that we're looking at both on the bike and off the bike, because I think the entertainment value of the sport is both, and we have to keep, and like the growth of the sport relies on both. So I think it's good that we're honoring each with equal weight as well.
Yeah, and I mean, like, what better way for all of those fans that came out, and a large chunk of them because Pauline was back on the road, in the road peloton, than for her to win the race overall, and that final win that she took, and the viewer figures that we've now seen from the final stage of racing in France alone, which don't include like the rest of the world, which I'm sure was also up this year, is just incredible, the impact. And like I've talked before about how dangerous it is for the Tour de France Femmes to be like bigger than the sport of cycling. I think we might have surpassed that now. Unfortunately, but it also is, in a lot of ways, I mean, it's such an incredible boost to women's cycling, and it will mean good things in the future for teams and stuff. Like there's always, there's that like, yin and yang, give and take type thing. And I think overall this year, looking at the impact of the race on the greater sport as a whole is a positive thing.
There were moments throughout the week where it felt to me like I was covering the men's race in terms of the scale of the thing. I know, comparison isn't the most useful thing, but I think it's interesting in terms of the way that the race has evolved. Like we saw things like teams not allowing us to speak to riders at the buses before the stage. They would shunt us off to the mix zone, where before it was much more relaxed and you could just have a casual chat with people. That was much harder to do this time. The number of people around the buses at the start, it was sometimes just impossible to move around, which I haven't seen before at the women's race. And there's just this, I guess, a growing sense of professionalism about it, which is definitely a positive. But yeah, the way that it felt at times, it felt like it had, as you say, Abby, kind of grown beyond the sport a little bit, which that'll be an interesting thing to keep an eye on in the years to come, how that evolves, both for the race, but for the event as well, I guess, if that makes sense.
I think from the beginning, like this was kind of the thing I was a bit like almost afraid for when the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift was introduced, that that as soon as there will be a tour for women, it will become the biggest race, and everything else will become not insignificant, but it will become so much less important. And with that comes, of course, like the power of ASO in women's cycling. And that is exactly what's happening right now. And yes, it gives a major boost to women's cycling, but it also has maybe a negative side.
It comes with chains.
Yeah.
Shackles.
I'm just like, hopefully the article come out tomorrow, or hopefully this week around, they're basically like wrapping up the economic impact of this race. And I actually talk about in this article that, like, I didn't use the term bigger than cycling, but I think the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift has become bigger than cycling, and I think it is a good thing. I think the way that women's sport is moving, if it wants to continue in this trajectory, it needs to embrace that kind of change. I mean, you just look at it, it's the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift. You compare that with the men's, and the men's is just the Tour de France. Like, the very fact that it's the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift with like that key bit at the end, avec Zwift, shows that it is looking at the sport differently compared to the men's side, and it's looking at it as a commercial opportunity. And I spoke about this at length with Kate Verino, Director of Women's Strategy at Zwift, in the VIP car experience Lauren and I had on stage 2. Like, there is a potential to view this as a revenue stream, think about things differently, and apply this model to other races throughout the year, and then lift it up. Like, Lauren spoke a lot about how 80% of the sponsorship dollars are made for women's cycling are made at the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift. And like, so the conversation then became, okay, how do we then percolate that amount of money through the calendar to be able to lift other races up to the same level of professionalism, to allow more opportunity for partners to come into the sport and lift it up as well. So I think, yeah, it's a vehicle in which companies can use their sponsorship dollars there, and it's clearly working, because we'll go into in a minute what the viewership numbers did and what the statistics are showing us. But I think women's cycling is looking at itself as a business more so than the men's. And I think, I spoke a lot about how the Tour de France is a Tour de France, but like, we've got to start thinking women's cycling can't just think about themselves as the event. It's got to think larger than that.
But is that not a little bit late?
Well, is it a little bit late in what sense?
That actually now you've created this whole vehicle around the Tour de France Femmes. Avec Zwift, and yes, it does create a lot of sponsorship money, but actually the organization that profits the most is ASO.
Yeah.
And none of their money goes back into cycling, into teams, into riders, into, growing the sport in that way. I don't know if this is, I think, like I said before, yes, it's hugely important for the development of women's cycling, but I would be a bit hesitant to copy this into other races. I think you should take the success of women's cycling, but first of all, think about a new economic model where actually everybody can profit from the success of women's sport and not the ASO alone. Because it's also avec Zwift, because ASO didn't want to invest in women's cycling at first. It was Zwift who made the investment, not ASO. It was Zwift who took the risk to start organizing this race, in my opinion.
No, I think you're right. The intricacies of the ASO's fingers in the pies of cycling is something to definitely consider. I think where I'm coming at it more so is like the brand visibility that's offered at this event, I think is attractive to brands that aren't currently in the sport, and that's where the sport can grow. So it's like those non-endemic brands that can come in. I mean, there was a lot of chat about how Oakley wasn't present at the Tour de France Femmes, and like, what does that mean? And like, how we need to be more welcoming to collaboration, to collaborative efforts in the sport. I think I do agree that there needs to be a different financial structure. I was talking a lot actually with mutual friend of Abby and I's, Jessica Sarah, about this, like whether or not we look at venture capital or private equity as a vehicle in which to bring in to women's cycling, as if that's a way forward to kind of diversify the revenue streams there and take the control out of just the ASO for other races throughout the year. But yeah, it's definitely something to consider, and I do agree the ASO has too much control over this.
Yeah, but this whole discussion on itself, and I think the ideas of other ways to like form this economic model, there's been many in the past few years, and also with the Cyclist Alliance, we worked on like different ways to do this, but in the end you need the teams especially to be on board. I guess what's now happening with One Cycling is a good example of that. You just need a lot of money to be able to give some opposition to big players like ASO. But it will definitely happen, and like I have no doubts that this will happen in the future.
Do you think it's more likely to happen in women's cycling than men's?
Well, I think it would have been a really good opportunity to do this a few years ago, actually, to start this in women's cycling. I think it's kind of like a missed opportunity from teams and also UCI to, well, maybe you cannot really expect this from US UCI, but I think it would have been a lot easier to start this in women's cycling than in men's cycling. But yeah, I think it's definitely maybe at the moment there is more with the people who are like leading this at the moment. I think it's probably will start with men's cycling, but women's cycling will be part of it. Yeah.
But the very fact that like a couple years ago it would have been more possible than it is now just again highlights how big the tour is and how much the tour impacts just 9 days of racing impacts the whole women's calendar and every single team in the women's side of the sport. Because if it was possible a couple years ago, we didn't have a tour.
No, true. But I think it also shows the absolute lack of vision of people in the sport, that nobody believed this could be possible a few years ago, and they didn't dare to invest in something themselves. But maybe this is me being a bit skeptical, but that's kind of how I see it. Yeah.
Well, should we go into the statistics that's come out of the race?
Yeah, Georgie, hit us with some statistics.
So across social media and television in France, we saw an increase of 23 to 25% viewership, which is awesome for this year. The final stage in France on French TV saw 41.2% of viewer share, which means 41.2% of all people who switched on their TV were watching Pauline when in Châtel. What I found really interesting was the social media stats. They did an analysis on like the top 3 videos on Instagram that got the most hits. Coming in third was Christina Schweinberger giving her bike to a fan when she had a mechanical and said thank you. So always remember your manners. Second was Demi that amassed 5.5 million views. Demi Vollering crossing the finish line with, I believe it was Juliette Lebeau and Amber Crack at the end of stage 3 when she had her crash, amassed 7.6 million views on Instagram. But coming in red hot as the number 1 was actually, and it amassed 26.5 million views, was actually Chloe Dygert crossing the finish line 7 seconds ahead of time cut on the top of Col de la Madeleine and collapsing in tears and clutching her left leg. That was by far the most viewed piece of social media, which I found fascinating. So I think it just goes to show that fans are engaging in stories that aren't about the race result. They're engaging with stories that are like human, authentic, and show real vulnerability from the athletes, which I think is a trend that we do see in women's sport. We see a lot more of it. Matt, Iris, we were all there when we saw the emotion, like palpable emotion at the end of these races, which I don't like. I haven't been to the men's race, but I don't know if you don't see it on TV as much.
Was that video of Chloe Dygert, was that from the Kenyan SRAM's On the Crypto Instagram account?
That was on the Le Tour Femme.
Are these all Le Tour Femme videos?
Yes, yeah.
Because I wonder how, like, because there's been so many people around the race, of course, and also teams who make their own content. I'm wondering, like, how much, but like, if you would, maybe they would even be viewed more.
I think there would be more. Like, I think I don't know how it works with collaboration when you collaborate on a reel, for instance, on Instagram, how the viewer numbers kind of get split. But I have no doubt, like, and we also saw FDJ push out a heap of content as well. Alison Jackson was doing her thing with Dominique Powers before every stage, which was great, like that fashion show. So I'm sure that amassed a heap of hits. But I think the key thing is that there are so many stories around the race that are getting so much traffic, which is awesome. But by and large, the stats that I've seen, and Iris with Eurosport, you've no doubt seen stats as well. Like it's been another record breaking year. Like by the Monday, records had fallen for a weekday viewership for the tour. So it's the people are definitely tuning in.
I mean, I think one of the best things about the tour is that the Tour de France Femmes, avec, Zwift is that having the journalists on the ground and having eyes on the race mean that you have more of the personal stories on the side that don't have anything to do with the results. I mean, I know like for Matt and I, when we've covered the race in the past, one of like some of our best stories have been the stuff that we work on while the race is happening, while we're waiting to write about the results. And that doesn't happen with any other race on the calendar.
No, I mean, look at like Ashley Mormon-Passio's reel and like the attention that got. It's I think we don't I mean, we'll talk about Tour of Romandy, and I'm sure there'll be stories around Tour of Romandy, but doesn't carry the same gravitas.
No one's going to be there.
The Tour de France. Exactly.
I think what's really cool, and maybe I look at it also from a little bit different point as with my brand. I'm way more in contact with like women who just ride for fun and are not always that interested in professional sport or professional women's cycling actually. And you see that this Tour de France actually does that to women, and you see the women who come to the race. And you see like industry meetups. We had this, we organized this cheer squad at the stage 7, and some are like, they're fan of riders, some not, but they also come for the vibe, for the party, for the whole, for all the emotions that are around it. And I think that's really, for me, that's also what this race does. Like you attract women that are maybe into cycling but not into racing to actually enjoy the race and enjoy the sport and enjoy everything that's around it. And I think that is also really great. And they then also create a lot of content that is actually shared much further than what teams, for example, do, because I think the challenge also for cycling is to attract new fans out of this current bubble of, your regular cycling fans that follow the sport for so long. And I think that's something that these people actually do, that come to the Tour, that are maybe not so never been so into racing. But I know many that, for example, with the cheer squad we organized, that come to the race even though they know nothing about women's cycling, and they love it. They love it for the vibe, and then they get into it, because they're there. So I think that's, maybe it's just like, of course, a super small percentage, but that if you can grow that, I think that's and Zwift in that way is also an important one, because they also have a different audience than the traditional cycling viewer fan.
I was just going to say, it was when we were at the Women in Industry dinner with hosted by Zwift and Rafa, and we got to hear about the need for collaboration and the need and the kind of the catch cry to get more women into cycling. And like there was a lot of workshopping around the room as to how we indeed we do that. Like talking to Rachel Burnside at Shift Active Media, she's just saying like currently like we need to everyone wants to do the same thing, they're just doing it in silos. So we need to kind of come together and put our heads together and put our egos aside and actually collaborate on a solution. Because if we like put all our force and our money behind this one issue together, no doubt we'll get there quicker. But we put out an article saying there's like $31.8 trillion in spend available in women globally. And cycling has an opportunity to tap into that. And I think exactly what you said is correct. We need more people who are not pros, who just, women who just is starting to ride their bike, who engage in the sport. And then that's how we get grassroots spread.
Yeah, and it's fun to see that that's happening, starting to happen.
And you're part of it, Iris, like it's cheer squad.
The cheer squad was definitely lots of fun. Yeah,
the photos of you on the motorbike going through that was sick.
It was my celebrity moment. Yeah, no, it was really funny, but it was amazing because last year we started it, and there were maybe 30 people, and at the day itself maybe 50, and now I think there were at least 100, if not even more. So I think it's just cool, like, yeah, how that's growing, and also because there was also why we wanted to do this as a brand, because it's not about promoting Iris cycling apparel as to sell more cycling apparel to women. It's to like celebrate women's sport and do that like together with the pros and and just women who love to ride. And actually everybody was welcome. So it's super cool to see that that a lot of, I think sometimes also, because I also talk with other brands, like everyone wants, I think what we also have to let go at some point is maybe everyone wants a piece of the cake, or they want to invest in it, but they want something back for it. I think in this point, you also have to do stuff. Maybe for me, it's easier to say, as I'm like super small and I can decide everything myself as a brand, but I can say like, let's just go there. Let's just spend some money on it and build a big party, and let's hope that people love it. And I don't have to say to any CEO like, oh, this is the brand visibility you get back for it. Because I think at this point, it is actually that celebrating that sport together. And like you also just said, like, don't work in silos, but do that together with other brands and see the reach you have all together. Maybe you don't need an immediate return on investment. Maybe it will come in a few years, maybe not. I don't really care at this point. I think it's just really nice to do this kind of stuff. I don't know if it helps, but it's been fun. Yeah.
Speaking of return on investment, I think we can shift our focus over to the racing side a little bit of the tour, because obviously we had some of the biggest storylines of the season as well come out of the riders and the racing itself. And I think nothing is bigger than Pauline Ferrand-Prévot and her impact on this race, and the fact that she came back to road cycling with one goal in mind, and in 1 year she achieved that goal, which also means that there are so many possibilities for her opening up for the next 2 years on her contract with Visma Lease a Bike, who made a huge investment in her and her goals going forward with her career. And so now I think one of the biggest questions that I asked coming out of the race was, what can Pauline do next?
Yeah, and I think she was asked that in her winners press conference, actually. I think the question was started something like, you've won everything there is to win. What do you want to do now? And she kind of laughed and said, well, actually, there's so much I could still win on the road. And two things she mentioned straight off the bat were Liège and Tour of Flanders. Wouldn't want to bet against her if she puts her mind to winning those two races. They're both very much within her wheelhouse, I would think. I was just looking at her results from the Giro as well. She's raced it 3 times. She was second back in 2014. I don't know if she's going to have the appetite for doing a full GC bid for another race or for the Giro or anything like that. But she was second back in 2014 behind Marianne Vos and ahead of Anna van der Breggen. So maybe she sets her sights on that. I don't know.
I think one of the craziest things for me with Pauline and this win that she had and going into the season is, like, at the beginning of the year, or actually the end of last season, I wrote a piece on the comeback of Van der Breggen and Pauline, and I thought of the two that Van der Breggen would have a more successful, like, quotes, successful time coming back, because she'd been adjacent to the sport. So she saw what it took to win the tour when she coached Demi. She, was in the car, so she knew what the racing was going to be like. And the difference between the two has been so fascinating to see. Like, one of the reasons that I thought, oh, Pauline is going to struggle when she comes back to the road, was watching her at the Road World Championships last year, where she was spat out the back really, really early on in the race, and then ended up pulling the plug, I think. Like, she just did not look comfortable in the slightest in that race. And to turn it around as quickly as she did and come into this season and have such a successful spring, win Paris-Roubaix Femme, avec Zwift, and then go into the tour and win that. It's just like, it just highlights how incredible of an athlete she is. Like, I think we on the road side, like, we know who she is because she's had success on the road before, but we have goldfish memories, like, you're looking at the last 4 years of her road career, which she's raced every once in a while. She'd jump into French nationals and have a result that you wouldn't want to call your mom about, but she's just absolutely barreled into the road side of the sport and, like, obliterated what anyone thought was possible from from a rider. It's incredible.
I think that comparison with Van der Breggen is a really good one too. You look at the start of this year even, and I remember writing after the UAE tour that, you know, this was Fran Prevost's first outing in her first season back, and it would be interesting to see how she went on Jebel Hafit. And I know it's a smaller race and it's really early in the year, but she was nowhere. You know, she was completely off the back. There was no, you know, it was too early to say that she's not going to win the tour, but it was kind of like, well, she's got a lot of work to do. And then, you know, her next race is Strade Bianche, she's third, and then before we know it, she's winning Paris-Roubaix. Like, she timed the run beautifully. And then on the other side, like Van der Breggen in her first race, you remember she got third on that stage at Valenciana and third overall, and was dueling with Demi on the climbs there. And, you know, I think she kind of came out stronger and has been really good as well. I think in isolation, if you don't compare her to Pauline, I think Anna's been amazing this year in her return. But Fran Prevost has just gone to another level and has timed it so beautifully.
I think it's quite hard to compare them, actually, because yes, Pauline has been out of the road season for road racing for a long time, but she has been, of course, performing on absolutely world best level for the last few years. And those last few road seasons, that she had so many different issues and things to deal with. And I think in that way, those years, like you said, Matt, 2014, 2013, maybe those years, her first years on the road with Rabobank, they were just, she was amazing, really. And she was so promising in the classics. I think she also won Flash. She did well in the Giro, in stage races, etc. So I think in that way, she's also a bit more of a versatile rider than Anna, although it's almost hard to say because Anna is very versatile. Like, she can do a lot of different stuff, but she's been out of the sport on that top level. So I think Anna had like an amazing year and a really, really good comeback, and I think everyone would sign up for a comeback like this.
I agree.
And I think she will definitely improve in the future, but I think it's also kind of, she's maybe a little bit different rider than she was a few years ago before she quit. For her, maybe a positive way, as in she looks really like she's having fun. She's enjoying it. She doesn't have the pressure really anymore.
I just wanted to call out quickly, when Iris is talking about 2014 and how Pauline and Anna were at that time, I think it's worth pointing out for any listeners that aren't aware that Iris was actually on that team that particular year as well. So she knows what she's talking about, in case that...
As a humble domestique.
Well, you were there though, but I think there would be some listeners that didn't know
at that time, Anna was also still a super young rider, and they were all, there was like, I don't know, that was maybe the best team that have ever existed in the cycling, but it's been, and it's maybe not also been positive for everybody. Like, I think Pauline, once she left Rabobank and she went to other teams and she wanted to combine it with mountain bike, etc. And I think also the pressure of being that huge talent in France and everyone expecting from her to become Olympic champion in like 3 disciplines or whatever has also been, I think, a very steep learning curve for her. But yeah, they're all very remarkable riders and amazing talents, and it's great they're actually still battling it out together.
I mean, I think for Pauline, the fitness was never a problem. She's like, in the years in between leaving the road in 2018, when her last race in 2018 was La Course by the Tour de France, and she didn't finish that, and that was kind of her last big race before she raced the Worlds last year. And I think for her, like, yeah, her legs have never been the problem, but she took that time away. She had the horrible mountain bike race in Rio that was so talked about, and then again in Tokyo. Like, she had many misses in the years between them, and going into the Paris Olympics, it was when she really dialed in her mental everything between the ears. That is such a huge deal in cycling that a lot of people forget about. It's not about strength a lot of the time. It's about what's going on in your head. And she spent so much time in the build up to Paris, focusing on her head. And this is just like, thanks to that, she's not hearing all the noise around her being, you know, the first French Tour de France winner in however many years. It's she learned so much in those years to be able to take it into the road and have the success that we've seen this season.
But then we've also got the narrative that from hearing from a lot of riders and in fact a lot of pundits in commentary is like she's kind of rewritten the sport as well this year. She's rewritten what is possible, and many believe that this is, like I said at the start, this is kind of a new era in cycling. Like people are having to start to think about performance differently. And is it that we look more between the ears? And is it that teams invest more in that space? Is it that we invest, like that riders take longer to prepare for key races? Like these are all conversations that we're having.
I think the way that Pauline won this tour is going to change so many things in women's cycling going forward.
I also think it's something she, of course, learned over the years because, like, for example, now at the Tour, if you see how much she enjoyed actually the attention and all the fans that came out for her, well, maybe, I'm just guessing this, maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago, this felt like a huge pressure for her. And I think it's also like, if you think about being a rider of not even 20 years old, being 3 times world champion in one season, and all of France expecting you to be, you know, the next big thing, to become multiple Olympic champion in the next few years, I think that's extremely hard also. I don't envy anyone being in that position. And some riders everyone deals with that different. And I think she has matured so much and she's become so good in like focusing. And maybe also for her, it works to take that time away from racing and just focus in the way she did, while somebody else, like, I don't know, maybe Demi Vollering really loves actually the racing aspect and you know, having that competition. So yeah, I think I hope there is still like a way for everyone to prepare for the races and be at their best in their own, in the way they prefer it themselves the most.
I think as you were speaking, I was like, I think the change that I hope to see is that we see more bespoke preparations for the tour based on the rider, like and that have and teams actually allow that, because I think that we'll see a new era of women's cycling.
But I definitely think that you can't win this tour anymore, or any big race actually, when you're on 90%, even if you're the biggest.
Absolutely not.
In the sport.
Absolutely. I think it was like talking to like riders on the ground. It's like their preparation was good, everything was good, but you know, they're slightly off, and then they're at the back.
Yeah.
Like if you're not 100%, you're like neutral's hard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But then, like, you had riders like first one spat out the back.
Yeah, you don't want to be first one spat out the back in neutral. You know, everyone's gritting their teeth, and it's like the neutral car just keeps going on that accelerator, and everyone's like, "Who's going to be the first to drop? It's not going to be me."
And then you had the very first stage, and it, like, I already like can't remember almost what happened in the first stage. It feels like it's only 9 stages of racing, but it really does feel like it lasts a lot longer than that with everything that goes on every single day. But you forget that the very first stage, the very first neutral, there was already like a crash. So not only are you out the back, you're also on the ground.
Yeah, Rosa was involved in that one, right?
Yeah, I mean, man, that there was a couple teams that had just like a horrendous week. I think like there were some that managed to salvage it. Little Trek came in wanting more, I think, but by the end of the week they had a good run at the last couple stages with Neef Fisher Black. I think she had a really incredible like salvaging of her tour to finish in the top 5 overall. It was really, really impressive. And I mean, how she rode in the ninth stage especially was just incredible. But then you had teams like Movistar who they started on the back foot and they lost Reusser, and then it kind of just went downhill from there. And Georgie, you wrote a really good piece about just like UAE and Uno X Mobility both just having a horrendous time with riders getting sick and losing riders left, right, and center. And UAE Team ADQ, with only 4 riders in the race, they still won 2 stages and had just such an incredible performance that it's almost wild how well they came out of the race, given that like halfway through the race you would think that they would be just kind of existing. But that's not what happened with them at all with Maeva Squibbon.
No, it was mad. Like, it was incredible to watch. It was like the underdog. Everyone was like rooting for them. It was fantastic. But we also can't forget, like, Lara Gillespie got 3rd on stage 6 at sprint day. Like, she didn't have a lead out. She had 3 other riders, 2 of them were climbers, and she manages to get 3rd. Like, it's just mad.
Yeah, but also her teammate, the Dominica, who got 4th in GC, was incredible.
Yeah, it's, and like she couldn't believe that she was 11th after the first stage at Squibbon won. Like, I was standing across from her when her mechanic pulled up GC and was like, "Hey, you're 11th," and she's like, "What?" Her like head went into her hands, and she just couldn't believe it. She's like, "I guess I just gotta keep going," and he's like, "Yeah, you just gotta keep believing. You don't know what's possible," and she climbs up to 4th.
I think one of the most impressive things about Wojciech's ride to me wasn't just the fact that she ends up 4th, but the fight that she showed on the last stage. Her and Juliette Labousse were dropped so many times on that stage and fought back on, and then Wojciech ends up 5th on the stage to take 4th overall. I thought that was a really gritty, gutsy ride that capped off a really impressive week after a terrible start for the team.
It's a good future for Poland, eh?
2 riders in top 4,
Yeah.
Yeah, and you, Georgie, you mentioned it on the final podcast, I think it was, about how like Kasia has always been the face of Polish cycling, but now there's a new generation coming.
Yeah, and it's something that I think I said on the pod, the same mechanic who I swear to God I'm his good luck charm. I spoke to him before every great stage of theirs, but he said, like, this is Dominika is the next Kasia in Poland, and they will start to look to her now. I think Poland can now be a real player when it comes to things like World Championships and Olympic Games with those two, depending on the course.
Which also is an interesting one to talk about, is a bit about Kasia, who, like, she finished on the podium. The goal was to win, but I think she can still be happy with the final placing that she got. She was another one who, tailored her entire season around this one race, and the team gave her the space that she needed to do exactly what she thought that she needed to do to win this race. And she still, when it came time to stage 8 in the Col de Madeleine, she could not compete against PFP, but also Demi. So, like, where does Canyon Strams on to Crypto go from here, and Kasia as well? Is she going to continue focusing on the tour specifically and try to win another tour? Or is she going to revert back into the Kasia that we know and love, who is like one of the biggest animators of races? Because I think to win the tour, like, we didn't even see PFP for the first 7.5 stages, minus that one like accidental attack on stage 1. We never saw her, and it wasn't until she, like, to quote Cecily Uttrup-Ludwig, like, threw the hammer down on Col de Madeleine and took off, that we saw her race. And for Kasia, she didn't race like that during the tour. She was attacking at random spots. There was that one time that she was like going for the bonus seconds, but the bonus seconds were already taken. Like, that's energy loss. So I'm curious kind of what she does next after this.
But I think you can criticize Kasia for the way she races, but that's just how she is. And like, going back to 2014, like when she was also in this team, this is how she's been racing from the very start. And you can criticize her for this, but this is also how she won the Tour actually last year. Because yes, you always see her, but she's always racing in the front. She's almost never in a crash. She's never surprised by anyone because she's always there. She's super attentive. She races, especially when and that's also why I think she was in one of the best shapes ever, because of the way and she raced, her style, being aggressive, taking seconds wherever she could. And I talked about it also with Ronnie Lauke at one day before the start, and about this specific. I asked him, like, taking that bony second, was that when she made this attack? I don't know, was it stage 3 or 2, or I can't remember. Was that something on purpose? And he said, so I don't know what he said exactly, but it was something like, well, you can make a plan with Kasia, but in the end she does. Like, she's a rider who rides on intuition, and I don't think you can change that. And I hope actually it never changes. And I think she's still able to win a Tour in this way because she did it before, and she's still able to get better. And I think she had an incredible level this year, but there was just one person even more outstanding. But if you would leave PFP out of it and she wouldn't have been there, I think it could have been a super interesting battle between Demi and Kasia again. Because maybe Demi is physically stronger, but then Kasia is so I don't know, do you know probably how to say this in English, but she's just so race smart also.
Yeah, she is.
Exactly.
I mean, I agree. Like, I would never want her to change how she races because I think she's such an exciting racer to watch. And that's how she's amassed the amount of fans that she has. And yeah, maybe it means that she doesn't win as often, but it also means that the wins that she gets are just so, so big.
One of the things that stood out to me most was when she rocked up to her press conference at the end of the final stage, and it was pretty late at night by this point. The stage finished at 7 o'clock. I don't think the riders came through till 9 o'clock or something like that. So they're tired. They've had a big race. They've done a lot of media already. And she was just really, really upbeat. And I just asked her, like, you seem really happy with this result with third. Is that the case? And she said that she was delighted to have finished third. And I think part of it was that she knew that she'd done everything that she could. She said that her shape was the best that it had ever been. She was putting out the best numbers she ever had. I think her quote was, "I did everything I could to prepare for the battle." And then she was talking about how she thought the Madeleine climb just didn't suit her particularly well. So yeah, she came across as a rider who'd done everything she possibly could and was ultimately beaten by a better rider on the day. And what more can you do in that case?
I think it also goes a little bit back where we talked about earlier, like, was this Tour de France Femmes maybe too hard? And I think, yes, for a rider like Kasia, maybe it was too hard to be able to win it. But next year it could be, you're so much depending on the course design, of course. And I don't really hope they're going to make this race a lot harder in terms of climbing, because it will make it a bit more predictable and boring probably. But I would love to see riders like Kasia keep battling for the GC while also hopefully still doing really well in like the Ardennes or other races.
Yeah, I think the course design piece is something I know we all are pretty keen to get our hands into and investigate, because I think it is an interesting question and it's one that's come up again and again. Sports scientists as well are questioning it. They're wondering, how is Pauline's win going to alter how we prescribe training for our riders? Like, how is it going to change how we do this? And it's I think it's all very interesting question, especially with the fact that this year's tour had a 20% attrition rate over 9 days. So the guys had 13%, which is, you think about that and like, okay, well, why was that the case? So we'll start asking those questions.
Why do you think?
What do I think about it? I think Matt's been hearing my ranting in the car for hours and hours and hours about this. So he's like, I've heard this before and I've cautioned her before, but she goes again. But I believe that we're not thinking about women's performance in a way that's bespoke to women, just purely because we don't have the research yet. I think we're not thinking about how female bodies react to a load that is the Tour de France. And so training, therefore, is getting prescribed on what we know based on research, which is based on men. Similarly, I think course design is done with I don't think this year was done it was a fantastic tour, but I wonder if we have more climbing in future, are we trying to chase the grandeur of the high top summit finishes that we see in the men's tour too much, or rather than leaning into what makes women's cycling so great, which is that aggressive, unpredictable style of racing. And we do need a course to match that. So I think with the attrition rate, I think it's people chasing performance in a way that's not sustainable is probably my take on it. And the course being just a bit too hard for most of the peloton.
After the Giro, we had Ezra on the podcast during the Giro for the team manager for EF Education Only, and she was saying that they were really glad that there was only one summit finish at the tour because of how well Gigante rode the Giro, and with her racing the tour as well, like what would that mean for the GC in the tour? And I think we weren't expecting much from the riders that did the Giro Tour double, with the double load of having done what was said to be one of the hardest Giros in recent memory, going and then only 2 weeks recovery time. But for Sarah to nearly finish on the podium, she lost it all on that final day, but to go into the final stage on the podium of the overall was just insane.
And she wanted to race Romandy.
No. Did she?
Yeah, she did. In our Discord, she wanted to race Romandy, but the team pulled her choke chain.
Well, I mean, there is an uphill time trial.
I'll get into that later.
And a mountaintop finish. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be said about the Giro Tour double, and this year was harder than most, and a lot of the riders who we saw succeeding at the Giro were not factors in the tour if they finished at all. We obviously, like, two of the biggest riders, Reusser and Elisa Longoborghini, had to leave the race early due to illness or injury, and then there was Sarah.
Yeah, I wonder how much of Sarah's freshness or ability to do well in both was the result of the fact she didn't start racing until, what was it, May or June or something like that, because of a iliac artery issue. And maybe that load that the other riders did have played a role. Who knows? The course,
Will there be a follow-up, Matt, on your piece?
Yeah, so I read a story before the tour about which riders were doing the Giro Tour double and what impact that might have and why riders were doing it and why they weren't. And I'm not convinced you can draw any strong conclusions from what we've seen. There are obviously a bunch of riders sick. There are a bunch of riders who didn't finish the tour or whatever, but I'd have to go look into it. But I think we had a quick chat about this on WhatsApp at one point, and there was no clear through line that you could draw, I don't think. I think what you can say is that both races were incredibly difficult and that those who did it would be very tired after both. But I don't think we can definitively say you should do the Giro if you want to do well at the Tour, or you shouldn't. I think it's much more bespoke than that, as we've talked about earlier in this podcast, that, preparation probably needs to be more bespoke than that.
I think the riders who really targeted the Giro, maybe that's how we look at it, is more like not how many riders did both ended up not finishing the tour, but how many riders who specifically targeted the Giro and went into the Giro with the best shape that they possibly could. How did they do at the tour?
That's a good point. But it's interesting that this will be the last year that we get to talk about it like this, because I will have a month between races next year.
Mm-hmm.
So then how does that then impact?
Yeah, that's going to be, next year's going to be completely different.
Because will we see the likes of Kasia going for the Giro instead of the Tour?
I don't think so. She's got such a,
I
mean, she's married to an American who, to them, cycling, the only cycling race that exists in the world is the Tour. And she also is someone who's very aware of the grandeur of the Tour. So I think for her that it means something more. The same as, I think, Demi. Demi knows what she is worth, and she gets more out of the Tour than any other race, and so she targets. Also, just the Tour is the Tour, it's such a massive event, and so for riders who have their finger on the pulse They will always target the Tour over the Giro, and that's just how it is right now. Well, okay. I think we could keep talking about the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift for months, and we probably will. But we are going to wrap up this episode. I'll really quick run through Tour of Romandy with a special treat thrown in a second. Ready? Tour of Romandy coming up 15th to the 17th of August, 3 stages. The first stage is a 4.39 kilometer uphill time trial. And now, after weeks without it, How Good's Minute of Madness.
We have been lacking a time trial for months, it seems like. The Giro was the last time trial that I saw on the women's calendar. And yet we have been treated in the World Tour calendar with another one. I was so excited when I saw it, but three stages at the Tour of Romandy in Switzerland. And stage one, Abby, you said you thought you saw a mistake, but it is in fact a 4.39 kilometer time trial, uphill time trial. So that makes it somewhat slower. But are we going to see time trial bikes? No. Is this going to be the pure form of time trialing? No. This is yet again another example of the Women's World Tour not taking the discipline of time trialing seriously. The fact that we have so many native Swiss people who are so great at time trialing, namely Marlon Rosa, and they get treated with not even a 5-kilometer squirt that is somewhat aero, is just an insult. So we really do need to see more, in all seriousness, long form time trials to really showcase the discipline of the sport. And yeah, I just hope that we see more of it in the coming races. That's a minute. Wasn't as esoteric as I usually am.
No, but it's been a long season. We're almost through it, you guys. We're almost to the end of the season.
Sorry, I'm going to continue. I just think it's like, do they take time trialing seriously at all? Like there wasn't even one in the Tour de France. Like, is that a grand tour when you don't have a time trial?
Yeah, we all know how you feel about there not being a time trial in the Tour de France Femmes.
I completely agree with you, Georgie. I think it's ridiculous.
Thank you, Iris. Thank you. Yay!
Maybe you can. I know a few other riders that are going to retire at the end of this year. Maybe you can create an association for
time trialists.
Time trialing.
Represent the
union for time trials. This is what we need.
Yeah.
International Time Trialists Association. ITA.
Yes.
I shall be the president.
Grace
can be my vice president. Ellen can be the secretary.
I was going to say, or the treasurer or something.
She is a treasurer, so make her the treasurer.
There you go.
All right, I'm done.
I mean, for it, I don't know how I feel about time trialing in general. I'm not quite as opinionated as you guys when it comes to this, but I do think it's a shame that for a 3-day stage race, one of them is less than 5 kilometers long.
And it doesn't matter that it's uphill. I think it's actually worse that it's uphill because it's not a time trial. It's just a watts per kilo battle.
Yeah. Yep.
Sorry.
I think it's cool.
I'm really Matt. No, Matt. No.
I'm happy about it.
No. Shh.
Stage 2 is 123 kilometers long. There's 2 circuits, and then they go up a 13-kilometer long ascent, averaging 7.9%, maxing out at 10%. So it's just basically going to be like a little roll around a couple circuits, and then just straight up a 13-kilometer climb to finish it.
Can you say the riders are going to roll around about 3 more times just to really ice it in their brains that they're just rolling around before they hit their climb?
They are just kind of rolling around a circuit. Stage 3, 122 kilometers with 5 climbs spread out after they race 40 kilometers. Then they just go up and down, up and down, up and down, 5 climbs, but they're not super long, 1.8 kilometers at 8.5% average, and then 1.1 at 5.7% average. And then there's one more kind of stair-steppy climb, but the final 5 kilometers is a gradual uphill to the finish. So like last year, we had a time trial, a sprint stage, and a mountaintop finish that decided the general classification that was won by Lotto Kopecky. Demi was second. Remember, they were teammates last year, and Gaia Riolini finished third. But it'll be very similar this year with a kind of circuity type race won by probably a reduced bunch or maybe a fun little breakaway. Last year, I remember in the final stage, there was a breakaway of Rihanna Marcus and Neef Fisher-Black, and it was fun because you knew that they were going to be teammates in the next year, and then they were off the front together, and it was this nice little moment for future teammates. And yeah, mountaintop finish is going to decide the overall classification for the Tour de Romandie. Start list is not out yet, but I will write a preview later this week. So come back to escapecollective.com later in the week for a nice little preview of the race.
Abby, just on the start list, I know it's not finalized, obviously, like you said, but there is a provisional start list up, and I'm not sure if this is confirmed yet, but I see that Fem van Empel is listed as a possible starter for Visma Lease a Bike. If she does start, that'll be her first race since Trofeo Alfredo Binda in March, and she's been on break since then for mental health reasons. So if she's in a spot where she's happy to be back racing and she does end up coming back racing, that'll be really cool to see.
Yeah, good point, Matt.
And I was just going to say, like, it just seems like on Team Visma Lease a Bike, they seem to be quite purposeful with like their rider care and giving time to riders when they need it. So Fem's an example, Pauline with 81-day prep into the Tour is another example. So I think they're prioritizing performance in a way that I haven't seen other teams do.
That's worth some digging into as well, I think, in the future. A follow-up to my What is Happening at Visma Lease a Bike article that was last year. On the racing side, we also have the Tour of, speaking of Polish riders, the Tour of Poland coming up on the 12th, Tuesday. So the day that this episode is coming out. Wednesday, Thursday, 3 road races. Last year there was also a time trial, Georgie, but it was 4.5 kilometers. So
the prologue. It is a prologue. Anything less than 5 kilometers is a prologue.
And Iris is going to be commentating that. Although, are you commentating in Dutch or in English?
In Dutch.
Damn it!
But it's going to be on Eurosport, HBO, whatever. Whatever you're watching, but in I think in every language. So
I still wish that we could listen to you commentate in English. It'd be amazing.
Yeah. You say
Someday.
that. You say that to every commentator that's on your podcast, Abby. So
no, I don't. I mean it with you more than any other.
We don't mean it about Phil Liggett. That's all right.
No, he can just not commentate a women's bike race.
Ever again.
Just stick with the men.
He can commentate in Dutch and Abby wouldn't mind.
yeah, he can totally commentate in Dutch. We can trade. I would rather have you. All right, let's wrap up this episode with our favorite segment, what we're obsessed with. We haven't got to do it for quite some time. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Matt wants to go first.
Yep. The thing that I'm obsessed with right now is the 2014 Rabobank Live Women's Cycling Team roster. Let me read some names for you. Lucinda Brand, Talita de Jong, Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, Kasia Niewiadoma, Iris Slappendel, Anna van der Breggen, Annemiek van Vleuten, Marianne Vos. That's over half the team. That is a ridiculous squad of bike racers.
What has happened with all of them?
I really want to do like those clickbait articles on the internet that are like, where are they now, child stars? I want to do like a where are they now 2014 Rabobank team.
That's a great article idea.
The other thing I'm obsessed with is we're just seeing the weather start to turn here in Melbourne. So the first tendrils of spring finally arriving. It's starting to warm up a little bit, which is really nice having come from good weather in France. Normally it's pretty miserable coming back home to Melbourne. So very happy that it's warming up and looking forward to more sunshine in the weeks and months ahead.
You need your umbrella though, Matt. I'm in Melbourne too. This end of this week's looking a bit grim. Not quite yet, buddy.
Bubble, Georgie.
Are you guys gonna after you spend so much time in the car together in France, are you gonna hang out together in Melbourne? Like, will you go get a coffee?
I'm in the good part of Melbourne and Georgie isn't, so I'll just stick out here in the east, I think.
I'm very happy with hanging out with the Melbourne Coffee North Side. And that is probably my obsession, is being back amongst the coffee culture in Melbourne. I did go to France with my AeroPress and some coffee that I bought from Melbourne, and I built my tower up every morning to make my coffee, which Matt was privy to. So when there was a kettle in my room at the hotel, I like squealed with joy when I walked in so I could have my coffee in my bed. So it's nice to be back in the land of the good coffee, and I don't have to see the word espresso on a coffee machine for a little while.
It's a good obsession.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to say I'm obsessed with Ibis France, because I've definitely seen too much of those and their coffee machines last week. Yeah. Yeah, I stayed another week in France, in Morgine, for like a holiday, and I got into this, like, probably you all guys have all done this before, but it was my first time mountain biking, because I'm now 6 months pregnant, so I thought like it's a legitimate reason to go on an mountain bike. And it is so much fun. Like, I never expect I would say this, but it was so much fun. It's actually a whole different kind of mountain biking. So, yeah, I think, unfortunately, I'm now back at home in the Netherlands, where an mountain bike is just something for lazy people. But I think in the Alps, it's actually pretty cool.
How does mountain biking differ to normal mountain biking? Because my only taste of mountain biking was with my colleague Gracie Elvin, and it was terrifying. But that was without a motor.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, I think, for me, what is different is that you spend so much less energy climbing, that you have way more energy for the technical sections. And so I felt much more comfortable doing actually more difficult descents than I would do on my cross-country mountain bike. So yeah, I think in that way it's just you still get tired, but you spend your energy in different moments.
So you're saying I wouldn't have crashed if I had an mountain bike, because I wouldn't have been tired from climbing behind Gracie.
Yeah, very well. That is very well possible, actually. Yeah, and also because you have so much more power, you can just ride over stuff that I would otherwise. It's technically also much easier.
Yeah, well, see, it makes a lot of sense, because the amount of times where Gracie would just yell behind, also keyword is behind, I was behind her. She was like, just power over it, just get over it, just ride over it. And I was like, she's like, trust the equipment. And I'm like, what? This rock is the size of my head.
Yeah. No, I have exactly the same when I mountain bike, like especially in the mountains. Then it's like I love it, but I'm definitely not so good at it. But with the mountain bike, it was
that's
my
really
next
fun.
Purchase
when I get rich and famous.
But okay, it's a very short session. Yeah.
My obsession, I'll wrap this up for us. My obsession is on NPR, which is one of my favorite things on the planet. I have been an NPR Plus subscriber for many, many years, thanks to my husband, who gets it for me for Christmas every year. The NPR politics podcast, which is normally quite a sad place to frequent these days. One of their correspondents, I think it was on Saturday, perhaps a couple days ago. Selena Simmons Duffin, who, been listening to for a really long time, but she had, at the end of the podcast, they have I can't get enough of this, or something very similar to this very segment, and where I got the idea for this segment. And hers was the Tour de France Femmes, avec, Zwift. And I was like, oh my God.
Even with Phil Liggett.
We are mainstream. Yeah, even though that she was watching the stream with Phil Liggett all week, she still enjoyed watching the Tour de France Femmes, avec, Zwift. So that was pretty cool to hear, like, when you're listening to politics and everything is very grim, and then you get to the end and I was like, oh my God, can you believe it? So that's my obsession.
Abby, you also buried the lead there. You were also on NPR last week.
I wasn't gonna bring it up.
Okay. Well, I brought it up for you, so now you have to tell everybody about how you're on NPR.
Yeah, I actually got to go on NPR to talk with Juana Summers about the Tour de France Femmes, avec, Zwift, which was a lifetime achievement that I didn't even think was in the realm of possible, which is just insane that in the year 2025, that there was somebody in the NPR office who was like, we need a 4-minute segment. Let's talk about women's road cycling.
Yeah,
It's
That's
just
awesome.
wild.
And you did a great job.
Yeah, phenomenal.
Thanks, Matt. I am glad that they pre-recorded it because I really dove into the weeds and they clearly didn't. They didn't use a single second of that. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up this episode. Thank you so much to Iris for joining us this week. It's been too long. We'll have you on again sooner than 2 years from now, I promise.
Okay, thank you.
And Matt and Georgie, you guys were our eyes and ears and mouths on the ground at the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift. And I think I speak for every single listener of this podcast when I say thank you for all the hard work. You guys were incredible. Just like, it was such a joy to listen to the podcast every morning before the stages. And you both did such an amazing job. I'm just so impressed and proud. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity.
This episode was produced, edited, and mixed by Will Jones at Red Bricks Media.